Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Zach, how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent today. Thanks,
Awesome.
thanks for the invite.
Awesome. So as we were talking on the phone, now we are on the podcast. So first of all, people want to know, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah. So my name's Zach Hale. I've been investing in real estate for the past 6 years now, and I really help investors, beginner, advanced, build cash flow and create generational wealth using a variety of real estate investment strategies.
Awesome. So as right now the market is really slow as per the buyers they don't want to buy because of the high interest rates. So how do you see the market trends, how the things are working in real estate and in general how the market is working from as an investor perspective?
Yeah, so it's extremely important to understand like the interest rates in real estate, right? So when we see the rates going up, there's a variety of things that affect prices, but interest rates is probably number one in my opinion. And when the interest rates go up, it could usually take like 12 to 18 months for the market to actually feel those effects, because unlike a stock market where there's a change in the news, it changes the next day, the same day.
Same day, yeah.
Right? But the real estate, it's much slower. So for me, it's all like these constant interest rates that we're seeing, it still hasn't realized its full potential of the effect.
Sure.
So we're just being, more conservative, like in terms of always focusing on making money on the buy, especially as a real estate investor and leveraging some of the strategies that we use. So that way you're protected, right? Even some of the deals we're working on now, we're building in depreciation, into some of our flips, for example, because we know the market's on a downward
trend.
Yeah, we can just see that with like houses staying on the market longer. Even like you just look at statistics, right, between list price and actual sold price. So whether it's multifamily, single family homes, we're noticing it's definitely on a decline, and it has been, at least in Sudbury, for the last few months.
And you mainly focus on Sudbury?
So Sudbury is our main focus for more of the hands-on investment strategies. Okay. So that is for like, the flipping, the multifamily. We're doing about 7 to 8 projects at one time, whether that's flipping or converting multifamily units. And I find like as we get more into this, you'll see like you really need to have a good team, right, to be doing the renovations, the property walkthrough. So my team is located in Sudbury. That's taken 5-6 years to build. Yeah. So for me to go and start in another market, I would be starting from scratch, right?
Every time is starting from scratch and then building up a team.
Exactly. Yeah. So Sudbury is the main focus, but I do, like for example, the rent to own strategy that we might talk a little bit more about. That's more of a virtual strategy. My team is set up like all over Canada, and I can do those projects in different provinces and things like that. But for the getting your hands dirty and flipping houses, apartment, multifamily, that's all focused to Sudbury right now. Yeah.
So where did you start and how did you start, first of all?
Yeah, so I'll just give you the full story, so it'll be a minute here. But I originally graduated from Fanshawe College in London, Ontario, back in like 2013 to become a paramedic.
Oh, okay.
Didn't know anything about real estate. And I had, it was still a little bit determined back then. I ended up applying at all these different ambulance bases all over Ontario. Unfortunately, I actually didn't get hired in London and, tried to go to other cities. And, within 6 months, I actually got a call from a place called Espanola. And I had no idea where Espanola was, and I had to look it up on the map. Turns out it was about 40 minutes from Sudbury.
Oh.
So I drove up there with my dad, did some testing, ended up getting a job. Thought I was going to be in Espanola for like a few months before I got a job back where I'm from in London. And 10 years later, still in Sudbury. But, long story short, from that, getting that part-time initial job, if you don't know, the paramedic industry is very challenging to get full-time. I ended up getting a full-time position. And it wasn't in Espanola or Sudbury. It was actually in a small town about 40 minutes from Timmins. Like, for those of you who don't know, that's another 4 hours north of Sudbury.
Yes.
And this town was about 120 people population.
Wow.
So I would drive, if I lived in Sudbury, would drive up there 4 hours, stay at the ambulance base for about, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, and then come back home. I did that for about 2 years, played a lot of video games, honestly wasted a lot of time.
Yeah.
And then one day I got a new paramedic partner that came in on shift, and he's like slaps this book in front of me. And it was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Awesome.
by Robert
Okay, we're back.
Yeah, my favorite book too.
Yeah.
And I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, like an asset, a liability, you know. Like growing up, like my idea of a mortgage payment was like you paid $1,000 and $999 went to the bank for interest, and
Yeah.
you know, $1 was principal. Like I had no concept of real estate. Like literally started after reading that book, and then because of the time I had at work and the transit time, I just consumed like everything I could. So I read the book in 2015. Like 2.5 years later is when I took action on like my first property. It was a 6-plex with the opportunity to convert it to a 7-unit, which we did successfully. Made a whole lot of mistakes. I learned a lot from it, and then from there transitioned into some other strategies, and really don't want to spend too much time on the story, but was able to grow a portfolio today of about 100 units in the multifamily space. So those are all 6-plexes to 12-plexes.
And those are all in Sudbury?
All in Sudbury. We have about...
So I would say you are Sudbury king.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mention that because we went to a conference, a real estate conference with our Sudbury team. And we went to Burger King for it. And I may or may not have wore the Burger King crown burger crosstown and I read Sudbury. So that's funny you mentioned that because, so we have massive stuff going on in Sudbury in terms of the multifamily. We're doing about 7 to 8 flips just on single families. And then I've grown a rent-to-own company really across Canada. So we're up to about 94 houses in various areas, cities, and all over Canada.
But the question is,
Yeah.
you were getting income that was fixed when you were working on a payroll,
Yep, I was.
right? So you were getting a comfortable income. Why did you jump into an ocean that is so unpredictable?
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Yeah, man. I think deep down I have this personality to be like an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Okay. And like even from a young age, like doing dog walking or trying to start like other types of businesses. So I always had that like thing for something more. Even becoming a paramedic, like transparently, the only reason I did that is because it was exciting. Like it was like the only thing I could see myself doing, like something different every day. It's exciting. There's no office, behind it. So I knew I wanted something more. And then after reading the book and changing like my perspective on things, I knew that like I could see my future as being a full-time paramedic forever, or whatever job that might be, right? Even though you're making like pretty well making close to 6 figures, I'm taking home like half of that, right?
True.
And it's really hard to save money. I had a vision of starting a family as well, and my family, like they don't come from wealthy background like whatsoever, right? The parents struggling, so I just wanted to be able to master money and finances and being able to leverage that so that I don't have to work for the man and can kind of work for myself.
Exactly. Yeah. So usually people don't understand. People get comfortable in just payroll and they are getting a fixed income. They are satisfied. But when you go into an ocean of unpredictability, but you will see a bigger returns when you are into entrepreneurship. But it's a really big struggle when you are starting.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You don't have any fixed income that is coming, and you have to have your livable expenses that has to go every month. And I feel like those are the reasons people are afraid to jump into the other side. But the other side is really beautiful.
Yeah, no, I agree. And part of it too was, I was actually like almost like educated, like, incorrectly. Like, so for example, when I was trying to learn about these multifamily strategies and, doing the BRRRR, which I'm sure you guys have talked about before, a value add where you're, buying it under market value, renovating and refinancing, I was like educated, okay, it's going to be all this passive income. Right. And after doing like my first project, like it was furthest from the truth. Like I literally just started another full-time job.
Wow.
So I have a full-time paramedic job now, managing like a 6-plex conversion full-time with the contractors, the tenants, And it really kind of opened my eyes, being like, you know, anything you do in life it's hard work.
It's hard work.
Right? Like even to this day, like, you know, there's some days that I'm still working like 16 hours in a day or whatever, you know.
Yeah, that's how things work. But the thing is,
yeah.
you get a good output. When you see the output
Yeah.
come in, then you work.
100%.
But when you are into full-time job, even though you're working hard, you're still getting paid, and there is a cap on your income.
Exactly. And there was like a year period where you're doing both, right? There's always that transition period where I'm still working as a paramedic and still doing the real estate stuff on the side.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't leave my job until about 2 years ago. So it was, you know, like really like 5 years of having a side hustle, right? And for me, it's important to believe in yourself, right? So like it was, when I made the transition to real estate, like I didn't even have an income to replace my paramedic job. I just knew like deep down, like cut off the bridge, burn the boats. There's no going back.
No going back.
I'll just figure
Well,
it out.
yeah, exactly. When you have options, you think about the options. But you got no options, then you have to work. You got no options, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to go through the process, and then you back off the mind. You know that you got no option. Now you have to work either way.
You do.
Yeah.
There's so much weight off your shoulders just like
Exactly.
when I quit. Just knowing this is the way.
That's how things work. Like when I started, it was the same thing. I have no income to support, but I have to work hard to get that income from what I am doing right now, right?
see.
And so, anyways, that was your personal story. So that's how you started. So, in current situation, how the market is going? How do you think as an investor?
Yeah, like, so for, you know, just because I'm in a variety of things, like for the rent to own, we've made some very strategic pivots on how we can continue doing rent to own. Even
So how do you do that? How do you do that?
Yeah, so you know, typically in a rent to own, you know, how it works is we're working with a family or an individual that is wanting to buy a mortgage and, you know, can't get qualified for the mortgage for whatever the reason, right? New Canadian, you know, like maybe they don't have enough down payment that the bank's asking for, maybe their credit's a little bit low. Whatever it has, they just can't get a traditional mortgage. Okay, so our business like goes out and finds these individuals on one hand, and then the other hand is we also find investors that want to invest passively in real estate. Okay, and we're basically like a matchmaker in that sense. We already qualify both parties. We match them together. We buy the house for them. You know, let's say we buy a house today for, you know, $500,000 or a condo or what have you. And after 3 years, we sell it back to that client after we've increased their credit and increased their savings, got them, you know, mortgage eligible. We sell them back for an increased price.
So the future assessed value, you sell it.
Yeah, we set that price at the very beginning though, so there's no surprises. So to get around to the question, the concern is, okay, what happens if we get to the end of the 3-year term and the market has taken a dip and that house is not worth 500, it's worth 400,000. You know, what are we going to do there? So we came up with a solution for our lawyer. You know, this has been going on for about a year and a half now because I knew like this, you know, this gravy train of this appreciation eventually is going to end. So we figured out a way to do rent to owns without relying on that increased sales price, just really by doing 3 different things. I can kind of get into that right now if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so typically in a fixed rent to own term, you have everything set in stone for 3 years. All the payments are fixed. That home price is fixed. In the event where we have to do this extension, it's called our Bright Idea extension. It's only used in market conditions. Okay, you can't use this extension for every other reason. And both the investor and the tenant have to agree on this extension, the Bright Idea extension, before we even sign anything. So everyone's aware. So the first thing we do is we add a rent increase to the tenant buyer. So like I said, the rent payments are fixed for 3 years.
Yes.
4th year would be a 1% rent increase. The next thing we do is on a monthly basis, a tenant buyer has 2 monthly payments. They have a rent payment, okay, that goes towards the property. They don't get any of that back. And they have a savings credit payment. The savings credit is going to build up their future down payment. In a standard rent to own after 3 years, they have enough down payment. So all we do in years 4 is a portion of that savings credit now just gets added onto rent. This is not rocket science, right? It's very simple. So that gives a more cash flow, like more profit to the investor every month.
Yeah.
And the last thing we do is our company, Rent Live Own, we charge a less fee to our investor at the end of the rent-to-own deal when it closes out. Okay, so we do
this kicks out the realtor.
What's that?
This kicks out the realtor out of the picture.
Well, we use the realtors up front to buy the house. We'll get into that in a second. But what I'm trying to say here is like these three things can give us the same return on investment for the investor, still have the tenant buyer become a homeowner.
Yeah.
And we can do this for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. We basically will keep doing this Bright Idea extension until the price of real estate has reached our buyout price. And that's like a big thing for me because I'm still ethically able to set up these rent-to-owns, even though after 3 years, if the market's declining, it's fine. We have a motivated tenant buyer who wants to buy a home. We got a motivated investor that wants to earn cash flow. So it still just might take an extra couple of years.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Makes sense. So what are the other strategies you use? So first is the rent-to-own. How the other strategies work?
Yeah, so rent-to-own is like I actually got into the rent-to-own because after I did my multiplex, the cash flow really wasn't there. Meaning like I struggled with like maintenance issues or bigger expenses, tenants moving out, etc. So I kind of pivoted into the rent-to-own to build up my cash flow bucket. Okay, so once I had that, that consistent cash flow from leveraging the rent-to-own strategy, I got into like bigger multifamilies. So 6 units to 12 units. Pretty much all of them have been BRRRR projects where you're buying them, at a good price, putting renovations into them and doing some sort of refinance. We also do a lot of like wholesaling and flipping in Sudbury. So for those of you who don't know, we would get a project under contract and then we just assign our contract to another investor who's looking to buy a vetted, real estate deal by investors that are in Sudbury. So like we're wholesaling deals that we've touched them, we've spoke to the seller face to face. So that's like a great strategy. And some of those wholesales we end up buying for ourselves and flipping them ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So if you like the property, you don't have to sell it to the other people. You can buy it for yourself.
Yeah.
Fix it and get the equity out or, get even cash flow out of it.
100%. We're actually like right now, we just can't take on any more projects because we're maxed out. So that's why it's a win-win. Like we're still able to get an investor a deal if they want to be an active investor and jump in. And with all of these strategies, we use a lot of like private money, again, for investors that just want to be completely passive and just loan capital on title, registered on title.
Yeah, so it makes a big business. You have the private lenders, those are lending to the BRRRR methods that you do buy, repair, then refinance, then rent it, or you sell it, right?
Exactly.
And that gives you a capital, and then you can take that capital out, the down payment you have already put it in, and do that investment into the other project, and you already got your down payment from the appraised value of the market, of the property, right?
Yeah, 100%. So we work with a lot of like investors that want to benefit in real estate, but they don't, like they're working a full-time job, right? And they don't have the time necessarily, or they don't want to, build a team in their market or what have you. Yeah. So definitely a win-win.
So how do you, from the scratch, like in Sudbury you started, so how did you start basically?
Yeah.
How did you connect with people? So I know the connections are very important when you are into entrepreneurship. Yeah. You need bank connections, you need private lenders connection, you need, construction team. So it's a big team you have to manage and then put up a deal. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so the first thing that I got really clear on was nothing to do with building a team. It was more myself, was like the why. Okay, like why am I actually gonna take this? And you're gonna, like, this, right? Like with all the personal development books, they go hand in hand with real estate. So yes, I was educating myself a lot on real estate, but more education on personal development, just to get that why, like, because I knew there was going to be a bunch of roadblocks, right? Like,
That is true. You have to build up your mindset and the habits.
Exactly. Right? And once we're training that and had, a basis of it, I tried to like set my vision on like, what do I see myself doing in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? And then picked a strategy, like, because you got to pick a strategy before you can build your team, right? So I picked a strategy that aligned with my why. right?
What kind of strategy?
So the first one was the multifamily. That was like the first strategy. Like I said, I did the 6-plex conversion. So, when I first moved to Sudbury, started reading these books, I started connecting with, who ran like the landlord group, right? And from there I was like, okay, who are some investment focused real estate agents that I could talk to? Okay. Like from talking to the realtor, I'm like, okay, well, who's the mortgage broker that you guys recommend? And I bounced around a lot at first, but eventually I found a real estate agent that was doing exactly what I wanted to do. And the reason I knew that was because it's funny because it relates back to my paramedic life. And as a paramedic, I work with a coach, like a preceptor, as they call it, that taught you how to do paramedicine. And he just threw me out there, like, figure it out. Right? And this realtor was the same way. He's like, analyze all these properties and come back to me with like their top 3. Like, it wasn't like he was analyzing them for me or anything like that. So then I would come back to him and be like, hey, what do you think of these deals? He gave me feedback. But again, it was someone that had the blueprint of success because he had about 100 units in Sudbury as well. That's the key. You got to find someone that's doing exactly what you want it to do. So with his help.
How much is how big is the Sudbury? Because you are owning 100 properties, he's owning 100 properties. Who's controlling? Controls this.
So rephrase that, 100 units.
Yeah.
So I don't have 100, like I have like about 100 units. He's about 100 units. Yeah, there's landlords in Sudbury that have like 4,000.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a couple big wigs out there that have 2,000, 4,000 units.
How big is the Sudbury?
It's a population of 170,000.
170,000.
Yeah.
And you 3 people own certain.
Yeah, man. There's lots of deals there, man.
So how do you analyze the deals?
So really when I'm looking at analyzing a deal, I start with the after repair value. Okay. So you want to start
ARV?
Yeah, the ARV.
Okay.
Always. With anything. Like we're trying to achieve your vision board, you always want to start with the end in mind and work yourself back. So, we always look at the after repair value, but in a market like this, even though we think the after repair value, let's say, is like $1 million, let's say on a multiplex, we're going to knock it back. We're going to use a higher cap rate so that we're accounting for the depreciation, like I mentioned.
What is cap rate?
Okay. Cap rate is...
Because I know it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but a cap rate is basically... if you paid cash for an investment, the cap rate is really telling you what return you would receive.
So there's ROI, the return on investment, you're going to get it.
Yeah, that's like cap rate is just a good measurement. So for example, lower cap rate means the more expensive the building.
Okay.
Okay. So, you're in GTA, et cetera. You're probably working with like 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% cap rates maybe. Whereas in Sudbury, most of the multis we're buying, we're like 7, 8, 9, 10. I bought 12% cap rates, which means they're lower purchase price, higher cash flow.
Higher cash flow.
So, but it's also like there's kind of micro and macro economics here. And what I mean by that is some pockets in Sudbury might have very high cap rates compared to other areas, just like, Toronto.
So just like Windsor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Any market's going to have your prestigious locations are going to have lower cap rates. So we buy in very specific locations. Again, we start with the end in mind, the after repair value, which is usually calculated by two different ways in multifamily. One is by the income approach, which is the cap rate, and the other one is the price per door. And we take the average of both. So we do an evaluation based on the income of the property that it makes, and an evaluation based on the going rate, the price per door, and we average those both to get the after repair value, then minusing the depreciation, okay, and then we're going to be minusing the renovation costs. We're also going to be minusing the holding costs for the property, right? We got to pay our private lenders for, usually I'm budgeting around 6 months to 12 months to do that. And then from there, we're really getting like what the purchase price would need to be. So I'm analyzing all these things as getting like 100% BRRRR, ideally. Meaning like once we do the refinance, we get all of the money back. Sometimes there might be a little bit of capital left in the deal, but that's the bread and butter, right? So there's a lot of kind of work. I have a
lot of calculations.
I have a fancy spreadsheet. Happy to share with you guys.
Sure. Yeah, I would love to have that so I can do, because you need to do a lot of calculations, but if you have set up in an Excel sheet, you just put the numbers and
100%
thumbs up, right?
Yeah, and it's a numbers game in terms of analyzing deals, right? Like just in like July, I think we submitted over like 30 offers on houses, like on properties.
Wow. Yeah. Good. Awesome. So how that affects the investors like you who wants to invest in multiplexes or you're doing burrs for bigger properties.
Yeah.
How do you see the financial market?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of like novice and intermediate investors, even, first-time home buyers are struggling right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like you look at the cost of borrowing, you look at anyone that's bought a home, in the last few years and now are coming up to renew their mortgage. And
They are screaming. They are screaming, and a lot of listings are coming right now. If you see in GTA, every other house is listed. It's just because of the high interest rate and people didn't know what happened. So please do explain what really happened, and people don't understand that, so people can understand now from investor perspective what happened in the market.
Yeah.
They had a really low interest rate, all of a sudden the high interest rates, and they were expecting their mortgage will be, let's say, 3,000, now it's 5,000.
Yeah, no, I know. And this is why, preaching to Robert Kiyosaki, right? You got to look at your single family residence as what it is, which is really a liability, right?
Liability, yeah.
Like the easiest question is does it put money into your pocket each month or take money out?
Exactly.
So a lot of people, and including myself, right, got super lucky just buying a single family home and then selling it and, cashing out, making a whole bunch of money. But we just got to be very conservative because the interest rates is what's killing it, right? The rates, people thought they were getting secure mortgages, for 2, 3, 4 years. Now it's coming up for renew. The rates are much higher. So we got to be more diligent with, if you're trying to buy a single family home, more diligent of let's get something with a second unit or a third unit in it so that can help pay for the mortgage.
So
right?
Would you suggest to buy multiplexes? For a primary property, as a primary property?
Oh yeah, if you can, and what I say to because I've had a fiance for 8 years, 10 years now. So we're pretty much married, right? And what I tell Jacqueline is because we're also looking at buying a single family home in London, right? And we're gonna try to turn that property into an asset. Now we don't want to live with tenants, so multiplexes is off the table. But we're thinking about getting something with a little bit of land, maybe doing some Airbnbs at the property, even running a daycare out of the property. Because you're gonna have to get creative. So if you can withstand living with other people, if that's a model you can, I would have just moved my whole family into the sixplex that I bought, right? I had no monthly payments, but that just didn't work. So we bought a house in Sudbury for on emotion, and we understood that okay, the payments could be higher, but it's still affordable, and we weren't banking on it to make money, right? But now my philosophy is definitely shifted with this new single family home that we're looking at in London, to make sure that we can make an income from there that can cover our mortgage. Because, if you're just buying a house right now and you're going to be funding all the mortgage payments from your job, that's,
So you're saying you still don't own a principal property?
Correct. When we moved to London.
So you have 100 units in Sudbury.
Yeah.
Those are investments. And you're still living on the rent as in primary principal property.
Correct. The only thing that stipulation is, the 100 units in the multifamily, plus we have about 94 houses, right, on the rent to own.
Right.
And we still don't own a house. We sold it. We sold our house earlier this year, and I knew the market where it was going just from being in the space, and I was just we just took our few $100,000 that we made and we just put it into private lending.
So guys, you have to listen to this. This investor is living on the rent, right? And he owns almost 100 units in Sudbury. So he's getting a lot of cash flow, but still he has no principal property. And usually what is advertised is buy principal property first. So you guys have to think how the investors are thinking. So if the investors are thinking as to get a cash flow and then get your principal property, so your cash flow can fulfill the down payment and your monthly payments. So it's really amazing that you are telling this, that you still don't own your principal property, but you have investment properties.
Yeah, and the kicker would be is when we sold our home, it was a 2,500 square foot house in Sudbury, and then we moved into a rental 5 minutes from where 2 minutes from where I grew up, right around the corner from my parents. And we're 1,500 square feet to like that. The living conditions also went
great,
down.
right?
Yeah, just because we would struggle to find a rental at that time, and we just bought this one on location, right? So it's all about the delayed gratification.
Exactly.
100%. That's a big common pattern.
And you need to have a plan, and you have to think. You don't have to go with emotions, because what I see is investors, they don't go with emotions. And majority of the people, they go with emotions, and then that's the reason they get stuck.
Yeah.
Right. And what I see now too, the people who have bought when the prices were too high and everybody wanted to buy and everybody was buying at that time, and now they are stuck because they have the less interest rate at that time, but now the interest rate is increasing and they are still priced out of market.
Yeah, honestly, Robert Kiyosaki talks about this a lot. It's might be hard to explain without like a whiteboard, but the middle class are very like struggling because they like the poor is actually ahead of the middle class, and I'm going to tell you why.
That is true.
Because the middle class is like gets an income, and then their income from the 9 to 5 pays for like their expenses.
Yes.
Right, and then like their expenses on their mortgage, all their toys, and like kind of what's left over. Where the rich, they make an income, and then from that income they buy assets with it, and the assets profit pays for the expenses.
True.
So like you can figure out this like for yourself, like what are your monthly expenses, like how many assets are you going to need to pay for those, and that's how, like, truthfully, that's how we're living our lives right now. It's like we have the capital to buy our single family forever home, but I don't have the income for my assets to pay, not yet, but to pay like, let's say like the $10,000 or $20,000 a month that I'm going to need to, have that property. Right. So we're getting close, but that's just how I think. Right. And you can draw this out. There's flip charts for it, and kind of work.
Sure. No, you have to plan it. Mother, you have to listen to what he's saying right now. Right? So, so a little bit, if we go to the off-market deal, so how the off-market property works. So usually, when I get calls, they say, Paji means in Punjabi is like, brother, send me the properties, I will see, then I will get back to you. But they don't analyze how their financial situation is, so if they're gonna get approved or no. So how do you see they should go with off-market properties? Like you said, you have assignment sales, you do a lot of flipping too. So those are off-market, they are not on MLS.
Correct.
So how do you analyze those deals, and how should people approach for those deals?
Okay, great question. So analyzing those deals, so how we work as a wholesale company is we analyze everything like we'd be buying it ourselves. So remember how we talked about the after repair value, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So we do the same thing for the investor. However, we build in like our assignment fee in the price. Okay. As an investor looking to get involved in these types of projects, whether it's in Sudbury or different cities, the biggest thing is, how I talked about, getting your why, like building your why, selecting your strategy. It's number 3, which is building your team. Okay. Because it doesn't matter how good that assignment deal is or that pro forma looks when you look at it, regardless of which deal you're looking at it. If you don't have the team to execute it on, those numbers don't mean anything.
Exactly. You got to lose a lot of money.
The pro forma is like 20% of the story.
Yeah.
The other 80% is actually executing on the project, and we've had buyers that have bought some of our projects that made out extremely well, right? They crushed it. They had a really good power team. And then, we've had a buyer that like dropped the ball, didn't have a contractor renovating a 5-plex for like 8 months. Like,
yeah, now holding that property, he's putting out
it's crazy. So what I would recommend is like build your power team first. Like, it's nice to get on these off-market deal lists, but select your strategy, select your market, just hyper focus on it too. There's so many distractions in real estate.
Yeah.
We could talk about that all day, and I was distracted at the beginning too, but just hyper focus on the market, on the strategy, build your team around that. So if you want to go into multifamily, get a multifamily realtor, mortgage broker, lawyer, accountant, everyone that understands multifamily, right? If you're trying to get into like a house to a duplex conversion, find someone that's done it before. Really focus on building your power team. Like that's like the biggest value I could probably add, because there's so many buyers that approach us And it's like, yeah, this is a great deal. Like, do you have a contractor I can work with? Or like, and we help our buyers, but really hyper focusing on building the foundation so you can execute.
So you're talking about team. In a team, what are the people and their roles and how they do it? So you're saying contractor, lawyer, and then what are the other peoples that includes in a team?
Yeah.
So if somebody were to go through this process, I know it's a really tricky process, but it makes a lot of money, right? Rather than doing a full-time job, if you go into this process and you're helping government too, because the government wants a lot of houses and the houses are not being built. And if you can make a livable house for a person who is coming from outside of Canada.
Yes.
I was just reading the news and they're increasing what they want for the housing. Now the immigration targets are really going up.
No, there's no doubt about it that like what we're seeing in real estate, it's at the very micro level, right? It's going to go up, it's going to go down. The interest rates play a factor. The government could come out with a new rule next week that, lowers the stress test or increase the stress test, and that would have an effect. But the overall bonus about real estate is it's going up.
It's going up.
Right? Like 10, 15 years, we're going to be laughing about what the prices are right now.
True.
Eventually people might not even be able to afford homes. We could be look at other areas of the world with 50-year, 100-year amortization mortgages.
Exactly. So my father bought a property, and people don't understand this calculations. So they were paying $1,500, but their principal was going only like $100 at that time. And they have met their trigger rate, and now their amortization was for 90 years.
Wow.
And he's a business person, so he sold the property because he didn't want it to go for like 90 years. That's way too much. And how much interest rate he has to pay to the...
Where was that?
It was in Windsor.
No, it was in that. I didn't know.
They just increased the modelization, and people are still thinking their payment is just $1,500.
Wow.
But as a business person, he understood how the hell he's gonna pay.
Because we've hit the trigger points on a few of our mortgages, but instead of they didn't increase the amortization, they just increased the payment.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now the payment went up.
Yeah. So
it's interesting.
How from your perspective, how banks work to the investor? What are the people work? What are the things they see to fund your projects?
Yeah. So the first thing I would suggest is once you have the strategy picked out that's going to support your goals, and I could go into that a little bit more.
Sure.
Because the strategy, for example, one of the first questions I ask investors are you investing in real estate to replace your full-time job? Or are you investing in real estate just to make some money on the side to help with retirement?
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is most people should be investing in real estate just to help with some money on the side. They love their full-time job. There's nothing wrong with that. They're just looking for some supplemental income. Mm-hmm. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
But a lot of the coaching programs, et cetera, are all telling people to do the latter. They're all telling people, no, go full-time into real estate. It's going to be great. You're going to make all this passive income. I don't really drink that Kool-Aid anymore. Okay? So if you're going into real estate full-time and you want to replace your job, that's who I'm talking to here. You really want to select the strategy that aligns with that. So are you... the BRRRR strategy, in my opinion, is by far the best strategy to build generational wealth. Mm-hmm. Not so much on the cash flow side, I'll be honest, even though I have the hundreds units, my rent to own properties cash flow way more. Okay. Mm-hmm. But the BRRRR is a way to just recycle the capital, build wealth. So that would be a great, phenomenal strategy for someone looking to jump into it. And once okay, I'm doing BRRRRs, now you're going to have to I would start with a mortgage broker personally. Find a mortgage broker that understands, okay, are you going to be BRRRRing 1 to 4 units? Are you going to be looking at 5 to 12 units? Are you going to be looking at 12 to 25 units, 25 and above? And you want to find a mortgage broker who's in that space, right? Because a mortgage broker is going to be different if it's 1 to 4 units versus 5 plus. True, for example. And once you have that mortgage broker, they're going to be able to give you feedback on what the financing is going to look like. And from there, you could really already start running numbers, okay? I would say don't call a real estate agent first and be can you go show me some properties? Because you're just at the very beginning stage. So start with the mortgage broker first. Once you kind of have guidance based on their recommendations, The other thing is never take no for an answer. You know, when I quit my full-time job, my mortgage broker was like, yeah, I can't get you a mortgage. You don't have a 9 to 5 anymore. But yet I started working with credit unions. I started working with commercial departments in credit unions to buy single family houses. That's a golden nugget right there. Nobody knows you can do that. So what I mean by that thing is they don't even care about my debt service ratio or my T4 income or anything like that. I'm still able to buy a single family with 80% loan to value at a great interest rate.
No, with the credit?
Yeah, credit union, either on the residential side or the commercial side of credit unions. I do a lot of business with Desjardins, for example. So figure out the mortgage space first so that you know how you're going to get financing these deals. From then, like, you know, connecting with, real estate agent would definitely be a good start, so they can start sending you some deals, and you can start just analyzing, getting familiar with how to use the spreadsheets, how to use the calculators, signing up for a wholesale lists. Again, make sure you do it like in the area you want to invest, right? If you want to invest in Windsor, like, don't be joining my Sudbury list, because you're going to see a deal in Sudbury and be like, oh, that one looks good, and it's gonna mess with your mental space. So just be hyper focused. So you got the mortgage broker, the real estate agent. From those two, you could usually get some referrals for, you know, lawyers, accountants. That's a big piece, because they're going to help you set up the right structure, whether that's like a corporation for your long-term success. And this is all like, I made these mistakes, right? Like my first property, like I engaged my lawyer like after. It's like, oh yeah, I should probably put that in a company. So I still own that first property
on
my personal tax return, which is now, you know, it's just causing headaches. So definitely, so you got the lawyer, the accountant, you know, I got a couple of phenomenal insurance brokers on my team as well. And, you know, from there, it's getting into the contractors. You know, once you're starting to see these properties, like walking with the realtor, start bringing contractors, getting quotes. You know, we have a whole, you know, interview process for them, like asking them to, you know, show up with their insurance. Like, don't meet them at a job site.
Yeah.
See if they'll meet you at Tim Hortons, right? Ask the strategic questions, right? Build that rapport. Is this someone that, you know, you could, like, see yourself going out to dinner with, for example, right? You want to build your power team that's like people that you would have dinner with or share dinner with, right? Like if someone's on your team and you're like, yeah, I don't know about that guy. Like, he's not the right person, right?
Not the right person.
Cut your gut.
Tell me, yeah.
And you need to interview people. Don't be afraid to like talk to multiple, you know, like multiple mortgage brokers, even multiple agents, multiple contractors, and select the person that you think is going to be most fit to achieve your goals. And don't be afraid to change it. If you're not getting service.
It's your business, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody's now making you money, you have to change it.
100%.
Right? So, because you need to make money. If it's like a ladder. You have to step by step go up. And if one space is broken, now you're going to fall. So otherwise, you have to skip that step, now you have to put a lot of effort to skip that step. So if he's not doing his job or her job, then you have to replace it.
Yeah. So like on that note, like for contractors, like you want to have, I wouldn't say you want to have like 2 or 3. Like don't just get one guy and you're like, yes, he's going to do this project. Because if that guy left for whatever the reason, you know, who are you going to be falling back on, right? So you need to, that's kind of what we do. Like for just give you some context, when we started our flipping, we made a list of like every single contractor in our market and interviewed every single one of them that showed up.
Wow.
Right? This wasn't just like, okay, I'm going to pull up Google and call the first 3 people and send in some questions. Like, you take it serious, right? Make a list of everyone, make notes, see how they respond, see how they show up. Did they bring all the proper paperwork? All cues that you can look at to make a informed decision.
Okay. So now my question is, if somebody is a first-time investor, they already have a property, they have a principal property, they rented it. For example, in GTA, what people do is they buy a principal property, they live upstairs, and downstairs they rent it.
Yep.
So they put a little bit of payment in their mortgage, and the downstairs they cover the mortgage. And after that, if people want to start as in first-time investors, how much money they need to start to get into the BRRRR method or into multiplexes? How much would they need, and how they're going to start?
Yeah, so I would say like the first thing is decide if that's the avenue you want to go, because there are still ways to invest capital, like for example, like into the multifamily model without being the active partner. Okay, like we've worked with multiple investors, and I know other groups do, that they just want to loan like, 50, 100 grand and own like, some shares in a multiplex without doing any work. Okay, so that first thing is the same question is like, are you going to invest in real estate to replace your full-time job, or are you just looking to be passive? So if they are looking to be passive, there are multiple different strategies how they can get involved without doing any work. If they want to be active, the next step is going to be building that power team that we spoke of. And honestly, man, we've done like all the flips that we do. We don't even use any of our own money, none of it. So there's many ways how you can flip properties by leveraging like private lenders that would, loan money against title of the property. And, I don't know if you are familiar with loan to value. So let's say we have a property, this is even numbers, for $100,000. Most of the private lenders, again, these are connections that we built, but mortgage brokers also have access to private lenders. Might be a little bit more expensive, but they usually would give you about 80% loan to value. So they give you a loan on that $100,000 market value property of about 80 grand.
80 grand. But you have to put 20%.
Correct. However, most of the discounted properties that we buy, our purchase prices are 70 grand, but the market value says 80 grand.
Okay.
So we're actually getting a mortgage higher than the purchase price. The whole project is funded by the private lender, and then we'll top it up with the renovation cost. Okay. And sometimes there's a big disparity where we're getting enough money from the private lender to cover all of the down payment and the renovation.
And the renovations. So you really have to find a right property, first of all, under market value.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And so don't you think private lenders are really expensive? Because that's what people think.
Yeah.
It's like they're charging from 13% to like 25%.
Yeah, so we usually pay our private lenders around 12% to get around that 80% loan to value. But you are correct. I was networking with another mortgage broker, and he was saying that like 18 to 25%. Like that's definitely another risk tolerance. Like I would not suggest doing that. You should be able to get private money around 12%. How I grew my entire multifamily portfolio was through borrowing, I guess I was gonna say this stays between us on this podcast, like that's gonna happen. But I borrowed my down payments.
Okay.
At 15%.
So
I borrowed my down payments at 15%, put down 15%. Sorry, like put down my 20-30% down payment, all borrowed from not even a private lender. Like this was like, unregistered. So like a promissory note, etc., from like close investors. Then I would do the project and then refinance and pay them out, right? But that's
But that's a really risky game.
Oh yeah, 100% it is. You gotta know your stuff. And
yes.
I was just some of the projects didn't work out. I made the money in other areas to pay the lenders back and what have you. But it's all like all those deals we're talking about right now, Singh. It's like we made money on the buy, and one thing we haven't talked about is having exit strategies while we're doing this.
Yes.
So like, yes, I had an exit strategy of doing a refinance and paying out that 15% interest, but I also had an exit strategy of just selling the property. So meaning if I knew it, like something wasn't going right, like I kept, the equity in that property to sell. Like even right now, my entire multifamily portfolio is like 65% loan to value.
Wow.
Like I keep it very, because you want to have those exit strategies in case you need to get out. Hopefully that gives you some context.
Yeah, for sure. So my question is still there. How much money our first-time investor would need to start this?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're starting a small flip, right, like you could be doing this with 50 grand.
50 grand.
Yeah.
So at least you would need a $50,000 in your pocket to start this process.
Yeah, like I mean, it's all everyone's a little bit different with their risk tolerance, right? So there are still ways of doing this with no money, like I mentioned, right? Like you're just getting a private lender to fund it, and then you're borrowing money at a higher interest rate to like do the renovations.
Yeah.
Like you could do projects with none of your own money. Like that is possible. You just need to make sure you have like an A team behind you to execute on it and make money on the buy.
Sure.
Right.
And the next question is, how do you raise capital?
Yeah. So, I mean, I do it through education. Like I've been kind of preaching is you kind of have the two different types of investors. There are some crossover. A lot of my investors honestly come from active investors that have bought one or two properties and then they're like,
It didn't work.
it's not for me. It's too much work.
Yeah.
And so for me, like who my investor avatar is. So for you guys out there, if you're looking to like raise capital, try to figure out like who your investor avatar is, like who's the ideal investor for you and your company. Okay. And once you know who that is, you can like go out in the marketplace and find them. And I do it through social media. So for example, there's a ton of different like Facebook groups out there right now, for off-market deals, like beginner investors, you name it. There's probably a Facebook group from it. And a lot of people talk about like generating leads and things like that. I don't really agree with that because you don't have to generate anything. Like people are where they are.
People are there. From my perspective, what I think is everything is there in the market. You just have to connect it.
Exactly.
Right? And if you see a gap, you can fill a gap, you make money.
Exactly. So at the beginning, I was like going into, these strategic Facebook groups, doing a lot of one-on-ones, like seeing if this would make sense, like educating on my Facebook profile. I've since like transitioned up from that. Like I do very little one-on-ones now. It's usually like when we were talking, it's usually like webinars, one-to-many. But at the beginning for like 5 years, it was just on the phone, man. It was like, there's no secret sauce. On the phone, posting. Like I like to say, you could start with your A and your B circle, which is like your friends or in your family. That's your A circle. And then your B circle is like friends of friends. So just become like a walking billboard, like not a salesy billboard there, but if anyone's talking about real estate, talk to them. Have a catchy, first phrase. So they're going to ask you more questions. Cause I started with I talked about the sixplex. That was like money that Jacqueline and I had saved.
Yeah.
But after that, when I got involved in the rent to own, my mom was my first investor. My brother was my second investor. And then I leveraged those two investments to get my first ever like joint venture partner who then did another 5 projects with me. So it's just the commitments, what needs to happen, right? And
so what you promise, you have to deliver it. When they see the result, then they reinvest. It's same like a stock market. You get dividend, you reinvest the dividend, and now you have more equity.
100%. Right? And think of it more of like from a relationship standpoint versus like transactional, right? A lot of people are just raising money for transactions.
Well,
right?
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's just important, like, to really understand like your personal why and your vision of like, why you're getting into real estate. Are you getting into real estate to be passive, to be active? Because there's just a lot of noise in the marketplace. I think people are really confused right now. And at the end of the day, like if you're not happy, then like what's the point, right?
That
you got to
enjoy
the journey.
Yeah, and what I see is people, they don't want to educate themselves. Education is important, and more important is knowledge, right? And then it's a practical knowledge you need to have. So if somebody knows something, people need to start listening. But now everybody is telling, but they have to see who is telling the truth. And then go with that people or follow him, how he is doing. Like we were talking about Robert T. Kiyosaki, right? So he has printed the book. Now in book, everything is there. If people would read, people don't want to educate themselves and they don't want to step up. If they step up, then only they increase their skill and net worth. Because with more skill, you increase your net worth. You're gonna attract those people who are thinking in the future.
Yeah.
Because you have to, if you want to, like from my perspective, what I see is, if you're not thinking in the future, your present will not change.
I love it.
First, you need to see the vision. If you have a vision in your mind, how the thing's going to turn out into reality, you already have seen that. If you have seen that, now you can make that present into future, and you can start making that reality.
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And people don't think like that, and they are just stuck into 9 to 5 job, and they are just working for somebody else and selling their time. And time is the only asset people have, and they are selling it.
Yeah, and it's the only one that you can't buy it. Like you can't buy. Like once it's gone, it's gone. Right?
Yeah, you cannot buy it back.
Yeah, and you just need to take action, right? There just becomes a point where, like, I talk to a lot of people that have, spent tens of thousands of dollars on education, and yet, like, they haven't moved forward, right? So at some point, you just gotta make a decision and just take action. Just do it, even if you're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like it's just
That's how you learn.
Yeah, that's how you learn.
We are imprinted that if we make a mistake, that is not okay.
exactly.
That was printed in our brain. But the thing is, be more innovative into answers, then you get the answers and the innovation, and you can start up a business from that.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's like you learn all this, knowledge. You educate yourself, you have the knowledge, but until you actually take action and put it into play, like you'll never gain the wisdom
Exactly.
to accomplish your goals.
True.
So that just jump in, take action. I've made so many mistakes.
Well, that's how you learn.
If you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything right.
Exactly. And you learn. You have to make mistakes to learn.
Yeah.
But now you have made a mistake, and now you're not going to make a mistake. The similar mistake, not going to make it. Now you're going to make more mistakes in future, but you're going to learn from that mistakes. And that's how you do it.
When you make a mistake.
Exactly.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So
Listen.
that's it? Or you want to add something?
No, I think we're good.
Hey, good. Awesome, man. Well, thank you guys.